Your news, your views, your values. This is WMNF Tampa 88.5 FM.
If you enjoy roots, rock, and reggae, you're in for a special treat. Tampa's Tribal Style is bringing their unique Jamaican flavor to the Cuban Club at this year's Tropical Heat Wave. Led by the Ten Brothers, the group has been together for more than 11 years and have blazed a trail as Tampa's premier world beat reggae band. Tribal Style has played all over the country, opening for acts such as Ziggy Marley, Toots and the Maytals, Sublime, and No Doubt. Here's your chance to catch them live at WMNF's Tropical Heat Wave, Saturday, May 10th at the historic Cuban Club in Ybor City. Tickets are $50 in advance, $60 at the door. Go to WMNF.org for more info and to purchase tickets.
You're tuned to WMNF Radio 88.5 FM. This is the public affairs program called Community Speaks. And I'm your host, Patro Mabili. Of course, we want to talk to you about what's going on in your world, especially in your state. Today, we will focus on the worker shortage in Florida. In this time of deportations and culture warfare, Florida has a need for more workers. The governor's solution? Child labor. His office has drafted and pitched new bill language for the current legislative session that will cut restrictions on the hours that minors can work. The proposals are moving through the legislature with the support of small business groups and opposition from unions and advocates for the poor. Florida is the latest in a string of states to revamp or try to change child labor laws in recent years. Some have extended the hours teens can work while school is in session, or like in states like Arkansas, they have scrapped work permits. Others like Ohio have lowered the minimum age they can serve alcohol, while Iowa allowed 16 and 17-year-olds to take jobs they were previously barred from, such as demolition operations and brake manufacturing, for work training programs. And so we turn here in Florida and we see that the deportations have really stifled the agriculture and construction industries in this state. And if softening child labor laws is the solution, I'll be saying we're going to put more young teenagers in the fields picking fruit, and are we going to put them on construction sites, which is dangerous? And this is the way they're going to try. The state is going to try to build its way out of deporting so many workers. And this is part of what we're living through in these times. And also the school voucher programs that we've been hearing a whole lot about. A lot of red states have insisted on using school vouchers and in many ways defunding public education, and especially the cultural warfare that has been taking place in schools, especially in the state of Florida. Book bans and erasure of history, especially of black history. And so we see this another attack on public school and public education, a good education. And the voucher programs, now it sounds good. A lot of people who are poor families very rarely get an opportunity to take advantage of those school voucher programs. So inequality is continuing to expand in these moments, especially when we look at the politics in red states. And so we're going to do that today here on Community Speaks, and taking your telephone calls, and you're welcome to call and talk about these issues, especially the worker shortage in Florida and the relaxation of child labor laws to build your way out of it. And in the meantime, you're uprooting people. You've had the HB1 worker voucher program, and now this the red states, Republicans are making certain that as a result of the culture war, you start removing people from this country. And as a result, there's a worker shortage, and who's going to fill those jobs? And will people continue to be exploited, or is the state going to continue to try to exploit workers, especially young people? And so you want more teenagers working, get more work out of teenagers to address the state's labor shortage. We're going to talk about that today. These bills in Florida are partly a response to the shortage of workers for employers such as supermarkets, retailers, and theme parks. And we've heard the governor saying that teenagers used to do those jobs, college students used to do those jobs, but those were also dead-end jobs and didn't leave young people with a whole lot of discretionary income. And so they felt exploited by these companies. And we're going to see what this legislative session ends on when it comes to these bills that are designed to address the labor shortage in this state and the idea of using teenagers in bigger numbers to do so. So if you want to talk about that specifically, call it 813-239-9663, 813-239-9663. This is Community Speaks, and we're also going to talk about the impact of school vouchers. We can look across the country, especially focusing on the state of Florida, though. We're going to talk about how that's been panning out for families, especially poor families, and whether or not this is really just another one of those culture war issues that Republicans have been exploiting to siphon votes away into their party. And what's it all for? Is it worth the effort? 813-239-9663 is the number to call. This is also Poetry Month. We coming to the end of Poetry Month, National Poetry Month, and we've been sharing with you some pretty good poetry over this past month, and hopefully I was going to bring you a little bit more from Deconstruction of the Mind, the poet Okai, and see if we can get the show started out with that. In the meantime, go to your telephone lines. Irene stands ready to take your telephone calls at 813-239-9663 as we celebrate Poetry Month. Start off Community Speaks here, and then we're going to talk about these bills, to address worker shortages and whether or not public education is continuing to be under threat.
This very real black poetry going to this very real black poetry going to this very real black poetry going to this very real black poetry.
Drum beats and heartbeats, I feel it pounding in my chest. Rhyme pumping, blood's flowing through the whole process. From the ear to the vein to the brain, it's insane how it works. From the earth to the birth to turf. Now I'm walking, start talking, running what life is about. Started beating on some buckets cause I had no other route. So you can say I'm self-taught, but the man cheat yourself. Cause if you feed off what they give you, it might fuck up your health. Yo, I'm in the mood to spaz like Gillespie jazz. My soul is street freelance, dancing with wolves. I do this for the ab, the ones that were born to have. Without a fair chance, I'm here to tell you that you should. Adjust the gas on your lighter, get the big flame, so you can put it in the sky when you hear the name. Oh, Kai, do or die, so we live the dream. Picture it in our head and do it as a scene.
Going to this very real black poetry. Going to
get with me.
This very real black poetry. Going to
get with me.
This very real black poetry. Going to
get with me.
This very real black poetry.
Don't need an AK to show you creativity. Give me a djembe and I'll leave it in your memory. For all my fallen soldiers, putting up my lighter. Putting up my lighter, dog, I'm putting up my lighter. Ghost of telepathy. I'ma read your mind and steal all your remedies. Analyze with, but don't get too close and touch, cause you might get poison ivy. Voodoo rapper give you fever in an instant. Take away all your memory like an infant. A new trait. With no dialogue or technology, we can still communicate. Fox to the past to find simplicity. Less difficult to find a miracle. Get with me. No choice when you hear a voice fall back. Dressed in all black, ready for combat.
Going to this very real black poetry. going to
get with me.
is very real black poetry. Going to
get with me.
is very real black poetry. Going to
get with me.
is very real black poetry.
Put pins in your puppets, make you feel the pain, and watch the blood burn through like toxic rain. Fist of the white lotus, going through your veins. We'll figure it out later what to do with your remains. This ain't BS talking, it went past the threat. You already dead, you just didn't know it yet. This is a written spell for our rituals, hoping to create a spare pity on our spiritual.
They can't have the cake and eat it.
This is Black Poetry's right here on Community Speaks. Looking for your telephone calls. We were talking about a couple of issues that I brought to your attention, but right then we were just celebrating poetry, National Poetry Month with Black Poetry from Okai, his album Deconstruction of the Mind. I see you're calling. The number to call is 813-239-9663. It started out talking about the solution to Florida's labor shortage, according to the leadership in this state, and that's child labor. In 2023, a law cracking down on illegal immigration prompted some workers to leave the state and made filling jobs harder for some small businesses, though specific data on the effect of the law isn't available. But the state's labor market continues to be tight, and Florida's unemployment rate was 3.6% in February of this year, compared with 4.1% nationally, and the job opening rate in Florida was 4.8% of employment in January, compared with 4.6% nationally. So Florida is doing a lot worse after it's engaged in this deportation scheme, and now leaves itself with worker shortages and no real solutions as to how to address it without going back on their deportation plans. So we're going to go to the telephone lines, and also talking about school vouchers here on Community Speaks. But right now, you can call me at 813-239-9663. We're going to go to the telephone lines and see what Norm has to add to the conversation. Thank you for calling, Doc.
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good.
You know, it's a funny thing how we travel down these various roads. You know, how when you live long enough, I guess different situations repeat themselves. And we're talking about this labor shortage in harvest. You know, we used to have this before in this state. You know, when I remember coming here from Michigan, and down to Florida A&M from Detroit, and I encountered some people from Tallahassee, or actually from Gaston County out there. And what I found out was, you know, when back during the time of apartheid, or when apartheid was really implemented, that you had these within the public school system, that the black schools ended, like in Gaston County, a month earlier than the white schools. Okay, the white at the end of the year, you know. So what happens is that, and that was primarily because black children were used in the harvest of tobacco up in Quincy in that area and stuff, because they're big on and they were used for labor. And so in order to facilitate that, the public schools, at least for under the apartheid system, the black folk were their school system was shortened so that they could get work out in the field.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, when I met my wife, she, you know, years ago, she talked about, you know, going out to the tobacco fields, and they would, because some people would sow the tobacco and then they would hang it and all that kind of stuff. And everybody, and this guy would come by in a truck, and I don't know, he was a black guy, or call him the big merchant, I forgot the name to it, that would pick you up and, you know, take you out there, and they'd pay you a certain, like $2 a day or whatever it was and stuff. But that foundation, you think about it, the millions of dollars were made that these companies profited from were made off of the minuscule work of the work all throughout the South, the cotton industry and everything, off of labor, child labor. And that somewhat ended. You know, it ended. So, and the reason was, and I can remember when I first got here, guys from like Winter Haven and places that I had never, Fruitville and all that kind of stuff, we're talking about they would go pick up their oranges and how they could rake in oranges and put it in the basket. But that's what they did, all right, in order to make everybody, the whole family. And then there was I remember when I was in high school or probably somewhere, there was a TV documentary show, and it was escapes the name, but it was I think it was Everall Merle that talked about shameful harvest, where these people would go from all the way from Florida, from Belgrade. Right? They started out in Belgrade and went all the way up and followed the harvest all the way up to New Jersey and stuff, picking beans, and then you pick something, and they come out and they'd have these trucks, and folks would be hanging on to these trucks and buses and stuff like that. It went on. Again, this is the system still somewhat exists, but we hid it by bringing in immigrants, people from these other countries, from the Guatemalas, from the Honduras's and El Salvador and stuff like that, and they've come in here and been supplanted in these jobs, still get paid well, people say, well, we call it a lousy wage because we wouldn't do that. And then look, and these companies have made billions. But look at there's a lot to look here that you see. First of all, the racialization. This is all what they're doing. You know, where look at these brown folks coming here. You bring them here, and then you make profits, tremendous profits, and you put them in the meat packing industry, all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, when they manage to survive and successful, all of a sudden there's a browning of America, or the Haitians, for example, that are up there in Ohio. But no one ever asking why it is that they do have to come. Well, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the United States foreign policy and interference of governments. I mean, if you had in a situation where people were not being exploited, these exploited, and the countries and their governments overthrown, you know, and because of our interests, like the United Fruit Company, or better yet, what happened and go back further, what happened in Hawaii, the Sandwich Islands, just came in and just took the thing, you know, the Queen of Hawaii, and took it so that they could grow pineapples and all sort of stuff like that. So our foreign policy has led to this kind of foolishness that these people have then having their crops, their livelihood decimated, or unstable governments and stuff, right, being led. This is what you get.
Foreign policy and now domestic policy.
Notwithstanding the participation of this country in the illicit drug trade. I mean, that just didn't happen overnight. I mean, you see where, for example, you go down to Bolivia. There were guys who were the guy called the king of cocaine. He was the greatest cocaine dealer. We were in bed with him. Why? Because these guys, these warlords, that you want to call it, are also anti-communist. You know, we can't have those communists.
Hey, Norm, let's see if we get. Yeah, you made a lot of good points, man. Let's see if we can get somebody else on.
I just wanted to put that in. You know we can't have those communists, and so we support these guys. Like when I remember doing the research we did, and you were within the norms. Okay, So we're doing a read about the story about the cocaine king. We're trying to track the DEA and all those kind of movements of what they're doing and stuff. And who do we stumble across? Klaus Barbie? I said, what? You're like, what's Klaus Barbie? He's being paid by the CIA and he's involved with the cocaine, Bolivia. And who else do we come across? Joseph Mendele? I mean, wait a minute.
Nazi.
What's going on here? And he's working with Barbie's working with the guy in Colombia, not El Chapo, but the other guy. I forgot his name. Escobar, and so is Mendel. You know, and we're like, what is this? And then when we fast forward it to today, and people want to talk about El Chapo, all right? Well, dude, just think about this, all right? Think about what we have done here. If you think about the drug trade in South Central, in South America, these guys, these guys aren't stupid. They look at the history of this country, and they say, well, then, if you want to think I'm a criminal, then how do you explain Warren Delano? Who's Warren Delano? Well, Warren Delano was the president of, is the grandfather of the president of the United States, the Roosevelt family, the Delano, Warren Delano, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Well, what does he have to do with it? Well, do you realize that the entire East Coast of the United States was built upon the drug trade? What? You ever hear of the China trade? You ever hear about the opium wars?
Oh, yeah.
You ever hear about how the Russell Company, which was a company that was involved in not only transportation in Massachusetts and those places like that, were not only in trade, but the slave trade and also the China trade, and the China trade, which is the opium trade. We hide that stuff. Pull this stuff up, man. And these guys got rich. The entire East Coast, all that stuff in Harvard and Massachusetts. What's it? The little town out there, all of them in Massachusetts. That how Ivy League stuff was built upon the China, the Careys. You ever hear about them? Mm-hmm. Yeah, those names sound familiar. The John C. Lodge, the lodges and places like that. All that was built upon that China trade, which was built upon putting opium into the veins or into the noses or whatever it is of the Chinese folks. Now, you want to know why China is mad at you today? Because they remember that stuff. They remembered it. So when you talk about why China lived through 100 years of humiliation, an empire of 10,000 years comes through and lived through 100 and something years of humiliation. They ain't going back. And so we sit here and complain about getting illicit acetylfentanyl from China. I'm sure there's somebody there say, yeah, we're going to put it to them like they put it to us. We don't understand the dynamic. We just understand the dynamics but I forgot, man. You and I ain't supposed to know about this sort of kind of thing. Now, you know what I'm talking about? We ain't supposed to know about these.
Yeah, but we do.
Activity, this sort of thing, and how the places like Brandeis University were built upon that China trade, and Harvard and Yale was built upon that type of trade. Not only that China trade, but the growth of the trade between agriculture trade that existed in the United States of America that developed this country, and that in terms of cotton, all right, production and all sort of kind of thing. That's not going about that. You don't know about that. You know that. Okay, anyway, so we'll keep it quiet. So I'll just leave. When you put it all in that perspective, Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Then it's all start, but we don't, this, folks don't do that. I mean, they sit out there, they want to, they don't blindly. All this has to do how this country has imposed itself. Haiti, beautiful property. What do? We turned around and invaded the country many a time. 1950, stole all the gold and stuff. Had them pay reparations to the French up until 2012. All that stuff has. And you want to know why the Haitians come here? They wouldn't come here if as beautiful Haiti is, as beautiful as Panama and all these other countries, Bolivia and Colombia and Venezuela and stuff like that, Brazil. Beautiful those countries are in the protection that they have. Why would they come here? Why? Because we've disrupted the economies of these countries for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
And then we want to blame. Then we want to talk. Then we want to turn around and blame them for being here, for being successful at whatever little they do, what they do, being successful, and we want to blame them because we're browning up the place.
Yeah, you covered a lot of ground with imperialist policies.
I covered too much ground. I'm not supposed to know about this.
That's all right, Norm. Thank you for calling. It's always.
I got to get back in my. He likes to call in, so tell him I said hello.
Thank you, Norm. 813-239-9663. This is Community Speaks. If you're trying to get in, give us a call right now. 813-239-9663. There's a lot of these subjects do tend to bring up a lot of historical context, and that's important as well. But we're talking about how these child labor standards are being relaxed in certain red states, especially federal child labor standards. People under 18 are largely barred from certain occupations such as mining or meatpacking operations, and those under 16 can work only limited hours. For example, no overnight shifts, and children 13 and under can work only a few jobs. And many states have laws that are stricter than the federal standards. Places like Arkansas, Iowa, and more than a dozen other states have pared back child labor laws since 2021, according to the Economic Policy Institute, which is a think tank. And lawmakers, nearly all Republicans, have sponsored bills loosening restrictions for teen workers in at least 8 states this year alone. And among those boosting the bills are conservative advocacy groups such as the Foundation for Government Accountability, a Naples, Florida-based organization that has lobbied for such legislation in several states. They often cast the issue as one of parental rights, arguing that families, not the government, should decide whether teens work and what jobs they do, which is idiotic. A number of states, like I said, especially Florida, are trying to use child labor laws to make up for the labor shortage that they created with these deportations, with this culture war against people who are visiting here, who are immigrants here, who came here oftentimes on work visas. So we see these Republican states are now trying to shift it and, I guess, resolve the problem that they created, deepened with their deportations by using child labor. With that 16 and 17-year-olds work more than 8-hour shifts on school nights and scrap the 30-hour week limit while school is in session. And this measure that has been advanced to the full House with a vote. Florida legislature session is scheduled to end in just a few days on May 2nd. So we'll see if anything happens on this front when it comes to child labor laws, weakening child labor laws in this state. 813-239-9663. Meanwhile, we see that there's also a use of using schools vouchers, I guess, to really help defund public school education. And as we're seeing the culture wars that go on in public schools right now, there's a lot of people, especially teachers, who have come under threat, librarians who have come under threat from as a result of these culture wars, the book bans and all of that, the erasure of history, the attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion. All of these things are part of the Republican agenda that we're seeing playing out in the states, and Congress may try to codify it, especially a lot of what we're seeing in these executive orders from the POTUS, the idea of codifying a lot of these agenda items coming from the right wing in this country, includes things like school vouchers. So 5 years ago, one of the boldest school choice programs were limited to lower income and special needs students, but more recently, scholarships and state-funded savings accounts open to most or all families have been catching on. And so this approach costs far more, at least in short term. This is partly because studies of the efforts in several states have found most of the first students to enroll were already attending private schools and not receiving taxpayer subsidies at all before the school programs launch. And in the coming year, voucher programs were expected to cost Florida taxpayers almost $3.9 billion, or about $1 in every $13 from the state's general revenue fund. And we're going to see this process play itself out if it continues to go that direction. But a flood of campaign money from voucher proponents has been a key factor in convincing previously resistant Republican lawmakers to endorse school choice plans, particularly as advocates have called for more school options coming out of the COVID pandemic. So we've seen these red states try to take advantage of that by increasing that agenda item that was already part of their agenda. This pandemic was used as a way of really exacerbating or really accelerating it. And we saw that they used the pandemic in their culture wars. A lot of students were at home. Parents were playing the role of teachers, helping students with their homework that they were assigned. And a lot of these Republican parents claimed they didn't like a lot of what they were seeing in the school textbooks and the required reading books that their children were reading, bringing home as homework. And they decided to start attacking school board meetings and acting unruly in a way that didn't promote conversation, but just basically Republican anger on display. 813-239-9663 is the number to call. What say you about this governor's use of child labor laws and of Florida's expanding its school voucher program, where any student eligible to enroll in K-12 public schools can receive a scholarship to attend a private school. These vouchers, averaging around $8,000, are funded through tax credits and state funds. Program is expanded in 2023 to remove income restrictions, making vouchers accessible to all families, supposedly. But people who have been advocates for poor families showing that these vouchers are not coming their way, that some of the same people who were already engaged, attending private schools, are taking advantage of these vouchers more than anybody, increasing the inequality in this state. 813-239-9663. This is the Community Speaks program. Comes your way every Monday. I'm your host, Patro Mobili, and Irene stands ready to take your telephone calls. And we also inviting you to write me an email if you have a response or a comment to make on what we're talking about, especially on school vouchers and the use of child labor in this state as a result of deportations. 813-239-9663 9663 is the number to call if you were trying to get in earlier. This is a great time to try again. If you want to add a comment, your comment or question here on Community Speaks as we make our way. Next hour, of course, we're going to get back to the music with It's the Music Monday. And that Bland Whalen is going to be coming your way with that. So stay tuned, of course, if you want to hear some real good sounds as we make our way to the afternoon. But right now, you're in the noon hour with me, Patrick Mobili, as we're trying to get your thoughts on school vouchers and child labor in the state of Florida. 813-239-9663 is the number to call. We'll go straight away back to the telephone lines, this time to Manatee County, see what Sue has to say. Thank you for calling, Sue.
Thank you. I can't speak to the child labor because I don't know enough about it. However, I've worked in the Manatee County school system for a decade. And what I do see is that the F schools, the D schools, and all the other schools should have the right to take taxpayer dollars and pay for a better education for their kids. The schools, the public schools, are failing them. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's the truth. And it's a shame. And we should do whatever we need to do to get our kids the best education that we could get. You know, go to the school board meetings, yell and scream. And by the way, I'm not a Republican or MAGA. Just saying. You know, get these districts to stop spending their money on new vans and this and that and invest in our kids. So
I tell you,
go ahead.
I completely understand what you're saying. If that were the case that a lot of these inner city schools where they have exploited the issue of school vouchers that say that these inner city students can take advantage of these and they're not able to take advantage of. They are locked out because people who are already in private schools are taking advantage of the vouchers. But yeah, you definitely need equality in the schools. And so if you are...
And if we had done a better job years and years and years ago, then our public schools would be strong and bright and successful, but they're not. And
why do you think that is? Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is? Mm-hmm.
I think that the big people in the districts just don't care. They have their own interests at heart and their little side deals for this and that and the other thing. It's a lack of focus on what the issue is. And the issue is educate our kids. They're all of our kids. Everybody's brothers and sisters. Everybody.
Certainly people are trying, because I know a few educators. My sister was an educator and ended up becoming a guidance counselor. And it's really difficult for her to make decisions on a day-to-day basis alone, or even for her school alone, because these are political issues that are coming down from the county level or the state level. And a lot of the money is being funded for that, pushed into these political campaigns against schools. And so, they follow the money, and maybe that is defunding the schools in the process, but that would be the crime if you're defunding schools to fund campaigns, and nobody gets ahead in that sense.
Of course. And, the teachers that I know, the educators, the school counselors, the coaches, they love the kids, and they do their absolute very, very best, but their hands are so tied.
Yeah, and because they have to come out of pocket because they can't get assistance from the school or from the district.
I know.
Yeah, so that's a problem. That's a big problem.
The problem is that education isn't the political.
It shouldn't be.
It should not. No. And, I just turned on my radio when driving in the car here, and I'm just so glad that you're talking about this. So Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for calling from Manatee.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Let's see with Fred from Michigan, our friend Fred. Thank you for calling, Fred. You say what?
Well, Patro, I had to call in and weigh in on this, and partly because I was listening to WMNF last week, and there was a similar discussion on this subject. A teacher and a school board member, she also had functioned on the school board, called in, and she pointed out some really specific details, something the Republicans have been doing at the national and the local level. And we're up in Michigan, but we suffered the same problems you do in Florida.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is, to the school system, is they put mandates in place that the schools have to meet to treat disabled kids, to treat, special needs, but they don't fund them. They underfund it. So they give them a mandate without funding. And then the school voucher system would further detract the money from the schools, take it away, and send it to private schools and continue to mandate public schools. Because the private schools don't have to take these special needs kids.
Right.
They get to select who they take, and they can take the best kids, the smartest kids, the best athletes, whatever they want to do. But the public schools are forced and mandated to provide this, but not funded. And just like they're doing to Social Security, they're trying to break the system and then claim it doesn't work.
Yeah, you see that agenda, don't you?
I see it real clearly, and it's becoming more obvious in this, what do they call it, the Unitarian executive theory, where the president's king. And I heard a very interesting comment. I wish I could remember the commentator, but as I've read reread the Constitution, I even got the Federalist Papers and started reading the darn things. And they talk about separation of power and equality, that each, department, judicial, executive, legislative, should have equal power. Nobody should be supreme. But what they never planned for and they didn't have when they wrote this were parties, political parties. They never realized that the loyalty to the party would override that to the country.
Right. And this is definitely a party agenda on the right.
Absolutely. So people have to wake up and realize what's happening, what's being done to our schools, and defunding the public schools, undermining them, and then criticizing. The book bans are ridiculous. I've never, imagined anything like that would happen in this country.
Right. Me neither.
Thanks for putting it on the air and helping to educate some folks. And myself included, because I listen to you. You always bring about more detail and more nuance to the subject. So I don't know. I think, and I see it, like you commented after the pandemic, that there was this right-wing group of parents, and I shouldn't say just right, because it's not, it's parents that were unhappy with the education profile in their schools, the what was being taught, the DEI to some degree.
And the facts in the books.
Right, but there's been a response to that, and now I see that the school boards are flipping again. More parents are being elected that tend to promote, books in the library, to have the Black history taught, if you will, the Native American, to have history taught in our schools.
Right. Yeah, you're right. There has been a pushback on that.
Good Lord. Anyway, God knows. Let's hope truth holds up and that we can save this country, because the push in some of this MAGA group that would like to see it be authoritarian and to undermine our elections and our democracy, it is not an unreal thing. They are definitely after it. Is it Kevin? Who's the head of the Heritage Foundation? Kevin Johnson? Is it Kevin?
You got me.
I think it was first. name, but he's one of the leaders of the Heritage Foundation and the group behind this Project 2025.
Yeah. And
they would be more than happy to take over the rule of this country indefinitely.
Okay, yeah, I was just looking up the names. I don't see Kevin D. Roberts claims to be a PhD.
Yeah, I shall try to, memorize. I've read it multiple times, but I don't capture it. I don't remember it.
Yeah.
So, but it's the people behind this, because Trump is he's a figurehead. He's the president.
That's right.
And he signs these executive orders. It's not legislative. It's not what Biden did. Biden did 6 huge legislative pieces with partisan support to most of it.
Yeah.
And that's legislative. These are executive decrees by the king.
Right. And I feel like he's lost a lot of confidence in a lot of people because they can see with their own eyes what he's doing. And apparently this approval, I don't really put a whole lot in polls, but this is his approval ratings is probably the worst of any president in 70 years. Well,
the Wall Street Journal said this is the worst April we've had since the Depression. That's on the Wall Street Journal. They're kind of a right-wing go-to.
Mm-hmm. Right, but they can't ignore facts. Hey.
No.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, and I'll keep listening.
All right, appreciate that. Yep. All the way from Michigan.
All the way.
Thank you.
We share the same battle, guys. We're fighting the same battles.
Yes, we do. And it's time to fight together. Solidarity. Thank you, Fred. Let's see what Z in Lakeland has to add to the conversation here on Community Speaks. Go ahead, Z. You say what?
Hello. How are you?
Good.
It's good to hear you speaking. I have a couple of things. One of them is, if we are funding private schools, they're no longer private, are they?
No.
They're public. The politicians use the little trick of giving the voucher to the parents so the parents can give it to the private school.
Mm-hmm.
But it's our money. It's our tax money no matter who's giving it to the private school, and therefore that becomes a public school. As such, those private schools have to come under the same supervision and scrutiny that public schools have to now. They have to be tested. They have to be watched. They have to be the same thing, but they're not. Private schools can do whatever they want. And I'm going to give you 2 live examples, that I know of. My friend she was hired by a private school that was supposed to be for special needs children. They took their funds and took them out of the school. And then they told the parents that they no longer had funds to feed the children a lunch. So the parents had to pack lunches for their children to go to school because the school said they no longer had the funds to do that.
Wow.
They didn't have the funds to buy books. They didn't have the funds to do activities. So all of a sudden, the administrators of the school started fleecing the school and keeping the funds and telling the parents that, we're sorry, we just don't have the funds to do these things. So the parents had to do it themselves.
Wow.
That was one. The second one was my granddaughter worked in a private Christian school, and she was a floater. She just took the place of teachers who weren't there. So all of a sudden, she's got, like almost every other day, a bunch of kids in the cafeteria that she is just giving out paper and crayons to, and they're sitting there because they didn't have a teacher.
Wow.
And this went on the whole school year, the entire school year. These, again, were special needs children.
Wow.
So they're sitting in a cafeteria coloring with little crayons. This is my granddaughter. She's not going to lie to me, okay?
No.
So, I mean, this kind of thing, if you are going to invest money into school and under the pretense that it's going to be a better education, somebody better be watching that better education, because these guys are lining their pockets, opening private schools all over the place, making themselves wealthy, and your kids are going to come out of that school dumber than doors because they are not getting the education, and nobody's making sure they do. And that's all I got to say.
Yeah. You said a lot. You mouthful. Thank you so much, Z.
You're welcome.
And that's important. These are important facts to know because, like I said, this is essentially political, using the money to line their pockets. their campaign funds, and then you open these schools, you give out these vouchers, and the people who you campaign to help, poor and special needs, they are locked out, and there's no oversight, as the caller said. There's no oversight. These people, these kids sitting there while these administrators are lining their pockets with tuition money and money not going to public schools. These kids are not coming out educated enough to even compete in the workforce. 813-239-9660. I think we're running out of time. We had some emails come in. One emailer said that public schools were underfunded starting in 1970. One way to make something fail is to cut the money. Also, the post office and Social Security, they have always wanted to privatize. That's very true, very important point to remember. And in Pinellas County, where 400 teaching positions are being dropped and at least 2 schools are being closed over the lack of students going to public schools because they are all using the vouchers to go to private school. Russell, real quick, let's see what you have to add to this conversation before we go.
Mavili, why don't you fact check that woman? Public schools aren't funded the same way that private schools are.
Not the same way? No. I think that's what she said.
Yes.
Okay. I don't think that's what she said, but we're running out of time. We can talk about that furthermore. We could, we do fact check, and I'm sitting here looking at how these vouchers are funded state by state. You can also do that yourself if you go to the summary on the AP News. So just go to AP News and you can see it for yourself. These people are calling in talking about their experiences. And I think one thing we could do is just listen and learn. And so that's my time here on Community Speaks. I'm going to get on out, make room, get back to the music with It's the Music Monday with Blaney Whalen coming your way next, right after we get a news update from the Scoop. Locally published, but locally produced news right here at WMNF. And so keep it tuned right here. This is where you got to get all your facts and all your good music. Keep it tuned. WMNF Tampa. This has been Community Speaks. I'm your host, Patrick Beatty. Thank you for all your calls. Thank you, Irene, for taking the calls and all your emails. And we'll bring up more of these issues, especially as it relates here in Florida, going forward here on Community Speaks. This is WMNF Tampa.